All right, let's get right into it. We're going to pull back the curtain on a hidden financial truth that's hiding in plain sight, right at the heart of the tech that powers our world. It's a story about a massive piece of engineering where the sticker price is dangerously misleading and how picking the so-called cheaper option can actually end up costing you millions. So let me start with a question for you. What do these three places have in common? You've got a hospital, you've got a major stock exchange, and you've got a gigantic hyperscale data center. On the surface, they're completely different, but they all share one terrifying single point of failure. And the answer is just that simple. For them, a power outage, even for a single second, isn't just an inconvenience, it's an absolute catastrophe. We're talking millions of dollars in trades vanishing into thin air, life-saving medical equipment failing mid-procedure, or huge chunks of the internet just going dark. They simply cannot be allowed to blank. And that is where this incredible piece of technology comes into play. The uninterruptible power supply, or UPS. The absolute best way to think about it is as a life support system. The second the power from the grid flickers or fails, the UPS kicks in instantly, and I mean instantly, providing a perfect, clean stream of electricity to keep everything online. It's the ultimate insurance policy against the lights going out. Now, if I asked you to design one of these systems, your mind would probably go to the most obvious solution first, right? And that brings us to our first contender in this showdown: batteries. Piles and piles of them. This is called a static UPS. It's the technology most of us are familiar with. You basically fill a room with these enormous banks of batteries, either old-school lead-acid or the newer lithium-ion kind. When the power cuts out, electronic switches flip in a fraction of a millisecond, and the batteries seamlessly take over, feeding perfect power to the entire facility. And on the surface, it seems like a pretty sweet deal. The initial purchase price is way lower, and you can add more batteries as you grow. But, and this is a big but, this is where the cracks start to show. Those batteries, they don't last forever. They need to be completely replaced every 5 to 12 years, which is a massive, expensive job. Plus, they throw off a ton of heat, which means you need expensive cooling systems to keep them from melting down. And of course, there's always the risk of a battery fire, which is pretty much a data center manager's worst nightmare. But what if I told you there's another way? A completely different approach that swaps out chemistry for pure, beautiful physics. It's time to meet the mechanical underdog in this fight, the Rotary UPS, powered by a massive flywheel. This thing is an absolute monster of engineering. Instead of storing potential energy in batteries, it stores raw kinetic energy. It takes power from the grid to spin up this huge, heavy flywheel to incredible speeds inside a vacuum chamber. Now here's the cool part. When the grid fails, there's no switch. The raw momentum of that massive spinning wheel just keeps driving a generator, creating a perfect, uninterrupted flow of power. It's just elegant mechanics. And the advantages here are just staggering. We're talking a lifespan of 25, maybe even 30 years or more. Insanely high energy efficiency, practically zero maintenance, and, the big one, no battery fire risk. But there's always a catch, right? And you can see it right there at the bottom. The upfront cost is much, much higher. It's also a true industrial machine. It's heavier and it's louder. So, this seems like an easy decision, doesn't it? One is cheap upfront, the other is expensive. Case closed. But this is exactly where our story takes a sharp turn, because we need to talk about the real price tag. I mean, let's be real. If you're a CFO and you're looking at two quotes, and one is literally millions of dollars less than the other, you're going to pick the cheaper one every time. It seems like a total no-brainer. Or is it? Let's just look at the raw numbers. For a typical system, a static UPS might run you, say, $500,000. The rotary equivalent? You're easily looking at over $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. That's double, sometimes triple the cost. At this point, you think the flywheel is a clear loser. But this is the crucial point. That day one price is only the first chapter of a very long story. To see the whole picture, you have to look at what's called the total cost of ownership, or TCO, over the entire life of the system. Let's say, over 20 years. Okay, so let's unwrap the first hidden cost. Remember how those batteries in the static UPS need to be replaced all the time? Well, over a 20-year span, you might have to do a full replacement 3, maybe even 4 times. The cost for the new batteries and the labor to install them can easily add up to $1.5 million. That's 3 times the original cost of the machine itself. It's just staggering. Hidden cost number 2, your electricity bill. A few percentage points in efficiency might not sound like a big deal, right? Well, a static UPS is constantly wasting about 4 to 8% of all the power that flows through it as heat. Over 20 years for a big facility, that wasted electricity can cost you an extra $800,000. Money that's just gone. The more efficient Rotary UPS just puts that money straight back in your pocket. So now you put it all together on a spreadsheet. You add up the upfront cost, the battery replacements, the wasted energy, and the entire story flips on its head. That cheaper static UPS, well, it actually ends up being the more expensive option over its lifetime. The Rotary UPS, despite that terrifying sticker price, is often 20 to 40% cheaper when all is said and done. So once the accountants and engineers actually run the numbers past that first decade, the spreadsheet delivers a very clear and often very surprising verdict. Let's take a look at who's been listening to their spreadsheets. And look, this isn't some niche experimental tech we're talking about. The biggest, most critical operations in the entire world trust the flywheel. I'm talking about the hyperscale data centers from Microsoft and Google, the world's biggest stock exchanges, major broadcasters like the BBC and ESPN, and top-tier hospitals that are literally banning large battery banks because they can't afford the fire risk. So let's just recap this whole thing with a final head-to-head comparison. The static UPS has a shorter lifespan, needs constant and costly battery replacements, has a higher long-term cost, and a medium fire risk. The Rotary UPS has double the lifespan, 0 battery replacements, a much lower total cost, and pretty much 0 fire risk. The numbers, well, they don't lie. You know, if you only take one single thing away from this explainer, let it be this quote right here. It perfectly sums up the entire story. The static UPS wins the short-term budget argument on day one, but the Rotary UPS wins the long-term financial and operational battle. It wins the decade. It wins the spreadsheet. So after all of that, what's the final answer? If you're building a mission-critical facility, which one should you actually put your money on? And the real answer is, it depends entirely on your priorities. You should choose the static UPS if you have an absolutely rock-solid tight budget for day one, and you can't go a penny over. It's also better if you need a really long runtime without a generator. But if your main priority is the lowest possible cost over the life of your building, and you want to completely eliminate battery headaches and fire risks for the next quarter century, then the Rotary UPS is the undisputed winner. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to a choice between short-term savings and long-term value. Now that you've seen the whole picture, the hidden costs, the whole shebang, which side are you on? Are you team battery or are you team flywheel? It's a fascinating multi-million-dollar question that the pros at the world's most important companies have to answer every single day.